So, the question now becomes, what do we make of all this? So we finished all the endings, all the death cards. We found the most desirable path. And we took the most desirable path. Literally, that was the twist from, well, if you haven't watched the last video yet, go watch it now, because that's when things get real, literally. That's the summary. So this is your indication to go watch last video first. In fact, I'm going to faff about for a minute and 10 seconds as we count down to when I'm going to start discussing what happened last video. It's a beautiful day outside. I just out there took a nice long walk this morning. Of course, this is after, immediately after I recorded last video, because the last video was fucking wild. So, I can't discuss any theories you all might have been putting out in the comments yet, because the part 31 is not up yet. It will be up by the time you're hearing this, but at the time of recording, it's not, so I can't discuss any of your theories. 30 seconds until we start discussing what happened last video. Click off now if you haven't watched the last video yet. Do it! Do it! Everything that's happened has happened according to my design. Jedi! 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay. You were warned. The last video, remember, we were dealing with the voice in red and the voice in green. One of those voices is Brian. We also have the discussion with a psychiatrist about someone who was displaying a sociopathic lack of emotions. Their psychiatrist recommended their treatment, but their guardian was clearly not interested. And based on the discussion with Monkey in the little post-game discussions, that might actually have been Brian. Because Monkey mentioned Brian's mother and Brian's actual guardian, whatever that means. Who is Brian's actual guardian? And is Brian's actual guardian the red voice? I highly doubt that, because Brian's actual guardian, if it is the guardian that we saw in that little flashback, is kind of a piece of shit. Real piece of shit. Okay, so in summation of last video, we got the best possible ending, which had its flaws. Which involved Dragon and Snake dying, and Mouse going to confront Brian, and the building exploding. And that was displayed as the best possible outcome, with only the necessary deaths. Which is real interesting. Really interesting. Why were their deaths necessary? What is Dragon's reason for being in this game? And her route and other routes, we haven't actually learned that. I think I brought that up once or twice. But it seems like it's becoming more important now than ever. Which is awesome. Love Dragon. Sorry. Probably my top 2 characters in this game are Dragon and Dog. And it seems like they're going to be really important at what's about to happen. So, to recap, when we first started the game, we had that scene between Red Voice and Green Voice, talking about predestination, shuffling the deck of cards. Each ending we got was one of the 52 cards in a deck. And each ending was clearly discussed afterwards, rating how desirable it was and whatnot. So, it's when we got the Ace of Spades, the best possible ending, that the meaning of that became clear. In that, this was literally all simulated outcomes of the death game based on everyone's knowledge, based on our knowledge, the mastermind's knowledge of everyone involved. Which in theory could explain why some people take turns to death and to murder. It's, in essence, someone simulating how someone is going to react in a given situation. So, Ox drinking fucking blood from someone he's just shot to death? Simulation. Based on their knowledge of Ox's personality, behavior, and the truth of Ox's occupation. He's a prosecutor and a good one, but he's also a bit naive, and he's also the group patsy at the prosecutor's office. He's easily used, so to speak. Even fucking Hans going full Hans on everybody could see that as just, he's the monster of the group. He clearly has his violent crime history. Maybe all that violence is just exaggerated. An essence of, this is what could set him off. Once he's set off, he's fucking going hog wild. I don't know. Maybe I'm presuming too much in that regard, but maybe I'm also using that twist as an excuse to, as a means to excuse some of the flaws of some of the routes, but hey, your mileage may vary whether or not that twist excuses some of the flaws of the other routes. I can see it. I'm still gonna comment on some of those at a later date, but I can see how that could. Again, I can see it. Your mileage may vary, and that's okay if you don't like it. If you don't buy it as an excuse. That's cool. It's all good. I expect that some might not. See, I see it, but those flaws still exist. That's my opinion on that matter. Moving forward, there is also the question now of the true death game, which we rolled straight into after the setup for the death game was done. And we immediately saw some things that played out differently. For example, from the get-go, Dog appeared to be on. He appeared to be big time on from the start. Knife out. Look at this cool fucking knife. Looking for everyone's reactions, reading the room. Dog knows some shit's up. And Dog's gone full investigated mode. We also have, I don't think we got into that deep of a discussion about why Dragon was here before. So we've dealt with that question. Dragon posed that question, and Dog had some interesting thoughts about it. Dog at least finds that weird. Dog is also overly suspicious of Mouse. At least according to the narration. I honestly don't know if when they said offhand in the explanation of Brian that he was Brian Bowen, if that was a typo, or if that was the truth. We don't know that yet. They still said he was the son of Aaron Morris, so likely a typo and not meaning anything. We'll find that out soon enough, but went through the game normally. Interesting, 2 things of note. 1, dog followed snake and dragon, and they lived. 2, Mouse went to confront Brian as usual, but before she could get the door open, she got tased from behind. The question is, who tased her, and who is still missing? Now we're finally getting to the core of the thing I wanted to discuss from the start. What happened? Here's my theories. 1, Mouse is the mastermind. And the whole confronting Brian thing is meant to be a double suicide should the game play out that no one dies. Or should the game play out that the 2 necessary deaths happened. In which case, the person who stunned us was Dog, who's clearly setting out to thwart, who clearly knows what's up, and set out to thwart. But interestingly, based on the way the discussion played out, in the post-game comments, the explosion still happened and Brian still quote-unquote died, so unknown. Number 2, Dog is the red voice. Obvious card theme of determining the future. Question out there from the red voice after the flashback with the psychiatrist, saying that it wasn't that they couldn't feel emotions, it's that they could control their emotions. And they originally left all their emotions on, but then they learned that was dangerous. So now they tightly control their emotions. Who seems the most easygoing, and yet most in control of their emotions? Dog. Could be. Anyway, I've faffed about for entirely too long now. If I remember, I'll put a timestamp for you to skip my fucking rambling. And now we pick things up after the death game in this location. The news surrounding the incident that took place at XXX High School is still incoming as you get more information surrounding the incident. There are many unsolved mysteries with this whole event. Perhaps the biggest remaining question mark is the location of the 4 of the victims abducted by the mastermind, Brian Morris. Other victims of the incident claimed that all 4 missing victims were, in fact, alive at the end of the purported death game. Oh, we didn't hear from Dragon, Snake, Mouse, and Dog. However, at present, it appears as though the ex-cop and current bartender Jamie Wilbert stole a nearby car from the scene and kidnapped a young law student, a local gang leader, and an older teacher. Motivation for such an act is incredibly unclear. This, combined with purported interactions between Brian Morris and Mr. Wilbert before the incident, have led some to speculate that the ex-cop may have been a co-conspirator in the kidnappings. However, at this point in time, such rumors are mere speculation. More importantly, the police are still eagerly searching for any sign of any of the 4 missing persons. Many are concerned about the possibility that the victims, despite escaping the death game, were unable to escape death. Oh, my head hurt. I had not been getting enough sleep. I don't know how I could have been. Sure, my captor had been generous enough to provide me with a mattress and a blanket to help me sleep, but those few inches between me and the concrete floor did little. More to the point, the collar around my neck was really uncomfortable to sleep in, especially since it was connected to a chain. And I get why I was forced to wear it, but still, it sucked. Oh, and there's the whole currently being kidnapped thing. That certainly didn't help with my stress levels. Snake, I swear to fucking Christ, if you walk into my area one more time, I'm gonna strangle you when you sleep. A painting needs inspiration. When I'm inspired, I wander. The only thing you're inspiring is my urge to beat the shit out of you. My roommates also left a lot to be desired. Could you two please keep it down? Are you really trying to go back to sleep? With the lights on and everything? No, I'm just getting sick of you two. Your arguments are incessant, and I'm sick of it. Why can't you two just behave? I don't know if I deserve much blame in all of this. I recall the majority of the altercations have come from Dragon attacking me for something rather benign. Yeah, but you're provoking her. Who? Me? I'd never. You know exactly what you're doing. If I've learned anything over these past few days, it's that you're actually just as childish as she is. Childish? Who the fuck are you calling childish? I don't have time for this. Correction, you have nothing but time for this. And that's the problem, isn't it? It was at this point that our captor decided to make his entrance, carrying a tray of food and drinks. I brought breakfast. Silence filled the room. A thank you might be nice. Fuck you, you psychopath. You kidnapped us. Maybe, but this and that are separate things. So, do you want to have breakfast, or not? So our meal contingent on showing you respect by thanking you. It'd be dickish if that was the case, wouldn't it? It would. And I suppose not. In that case, I'll also refrain. Gotcha. Mouse? Thank you for the meal, dog. No problem. Mouse? You fucking traitorous strike-breaking blackleg. We're supposed to be united front. A united front doesn't have nearly as much infighting as this. Besides, united front against who? Dog, obviously. My, I need a full united front to be taken down? How flattering. If Dragon was expecting me to work up a lot of anger at Dog, she'd be disappointed. I was pretty pissed at him, no doubt. But all things considered, he'd been a pretty reasonable host to his captives. He listened to most of the requests asked of him, and did his best to keep us occupied with books and painting supplies and whatnot. He even hosted daily game nights, which was slightly surreal. Besides, I could see where he was coming from with all this. What? Chained? Down here? A lot more than I could with Bride, at any rate. So, Dick, anything change? Are you gonna let us out yet? If I do, are you gonna storm out into the open? Of fucking course I am. What, do you want me to live in your stupid basement forever? In that case, I'm afraid you have to stay here. Trust me, it's for your own good. How could you say that shit with a straight face when you're imprisoning us? Well, I also saved you 3, so I think it kinda evens out. I must say, Dog, I'm surprised that we are still here. Presumably the police should be looking for us, no? Oh, they are. But I doubt they'll find us here. I got a lot of good connections from working as a cop and a bartender. This one's pretty low-key, pretty reliable. We could hide out here for over a month. How exciting. Dog, I'm trying to be understanding. I still don't understand everything. I don't get why you're doing all of this. Could you try to explain it all clearly? Again with this? Dog sighed. I suppose keeping it from you ain't gonna do much good at this point. I'm gonna be keeping you guys here without your consent. Least I could do is give you the full layout of things. Else I'd be total scum, you know? Trust me, you already are. Ouch. And my hide might be fair. Anyway, if you really want to understand, I'm gonna have to bore you with the whole story. So strap in, folks. How exciting. Looking forward to it. Could you two shut up? You're honestly a lot more similar than either would care to admit. Alright, so you already know I used to be a cop, yeah? You may not believe it, but I was a pretty good one as well. Current Chief of Police, Oliver Bowen. I came up with a guy. He was a really good friend. That point's important for why I haven't killed the guy on my own at this point. It was a sad and thankless job that did a number on my soul, but I did it all the same. Eventually enough was enough for me. The job was too cruel, too thankless, too draining. Plus, the Force was slowly getting corrupt. Slowly? Alright, well, you could argue that the Force has never been a shining example of justice it was meant to be. What I'm talking about is a lot more substantive degradation. I also knew that it was not in spite of Oliver becoming the Chief of Police, but because of him. I tried to get a straight answer from him. What it was all about. But that was a failed endeavor. At some point, it just wasn't worth it. So I quit, became a bartender, yada yada yada. And that was that until the case where Aaron Morris killed Amadeus Bowen, Oliver's brother. Due to odd circumstances, I ended up getting involved in the case. I gave important testimony at trial. When Morris was sentenced, I thought that was that. Until Oliver came to my bar late one night, a wreck. Well, he hadn't been great ever since his brother's death, but he was different. I was familiar with the look of desperation in his eyes. I'd seen it in criminals before. After a bit of pressing and a number of drinks, he finally spilled. I honestly couldn't tell you why he told me the truth that night. Enough stress had piled up on him, yet he had no one to talk to. I guess he just needed to confess. Whatever the case, he told me what was actually up with the Force. Apparently his brother, Amadeus, the jackass, had been filling his head with a bunch of stupid ideas. But how he'd have better control of the police, and ergo the city, if he got dirt on his subordinates. That's what Oliver did. Intentionally created situations where he could get blackmail material on the people he employed, and he filled a whole file full of the stuff. Pretty scummy shit. But not as scummy as what his brother then did to him. Amadeus got Oliver on tape confessing to the little blackmail scheme, thus creating blackmail leverage over him. Imagine being screwed over by your own brother. That's gotta make Thanksgivings awkward. Using the leverage, Amadeus got Oliver to hand over all the material he had already collected on his subordinates. To this point, Amadeus had his thumb over the entire Force. It turns out that's far from all he had control over. See, this little blackmail idea from Amadeus wasn't just a spur-of-the-moment thing. Amadeus had been creating his own little folder for quite some time. Being the CEO of an entertainment company, he had plenty of time to meet with big names, powerful people. Slowly and methodically, Amadeus had been dragging more and more people into his web. I don't know the specifics of how he did it, but suffice it to say, Amadeus was doing some real sketchy shit. But it had been working for him. At this point, he had pretty much the whole city of Hightower under his influence in some way or another. He was in complete control. And then, he ended up dying. That's karma for you, I suppose. When Oliver told all this to me, I didn't know what to say. Mostly I just wanted to punch him. That wasn't going to be effective at accomplishing anything, so instead, I asked him something. By Oliver's description, Amadeus was pretty much the actual devil. So why was he so bothered by his death? Instead of answering my question, he took out a knife. A golden, intricate knife. Is that? Yeah, it's the knife I showed you the other day. As fate would have it, Oliver would end up leaving the knife with me by the end of the night as a gift. But originally, Oliver was gifted that knife by his late father. Oliver's dad was a craftsman, and at some point he had gifted 2 identical knives to his 2 sons, Amadeus and Oliver. Oliver never thought much of it, but Amadeus loved it. Supposedly Amadeus had always been a lot closer with his father than Oliver. Amadeus was the first son, when his dad was going through his dramatic phase. The funny thing about these knives is that they're outfitted with a small little hidey hole. You wouldn't know it, just looking at the knife, but like I showed you the other day, it's good for hiding something small. Amadeus kept the knife on his person at all times as a sort of keepsake. He also kept a special USB flash drive on him at all times, a flash drive containing the totality of his work. His golden gun, his blackmail portfolio. 3 guesses as to where he hid it. In the knife's hidey hole. Bingo! Mouse gets it in 1. Makes sense, really. Keep one thing on you all the time. Keep another thing on you all the time. One thing has a slot to hide something the size of the other thing. It's kinda inevitable. But see, here's the thing. Something happened that Amadeus Bowen didn't account for. He was killed. And something happened that Oliver Bowen didn't account for either. That knife went missing from the crime scene. What? I don't recall hearing about this detail. Yeah, obviously this wasn't a problem Oliver was eager to bring up to the public. But no matter how much he looked, he couldn't find the knife anywhere. Couldn't find it anywhere in Aaron Morris's house either. Aaron Morris claimed to know nothing about it. But of course, Aaron Morris also claimed that he was innocent. Oliver was confident that his guys had found the culprit. But Oliver was also nervous about that missing knife. That night, Oliver was drunkenly confessing to me that knife was still missing. To his knowledge, no one on that file had been blackmailed recently, including him, of course. If anyone ever found that USB flash drive, it could be disastrous. Yep. The whole thing was pretty fucked. Anyway, that's what Oliver told me. The reason the force came down so decisively on Aaron was probably because they wanted to settle the matter definitively. Meanwhile, Oliver would handle the search for the knife privately. Flash forward a few years, he's kept in touch, said the knife still hasn't shown up. Then this kid, who's obviously a fucking kid, tries passing off this phony ID on me. Turns out this kid's name is Brian Morris. And he's pretty pissed at my part in convincing in convicting his dad. I don't really feel bad about any of that. I just did my part. I spoke the truth. Didn't have a reason to feel bad, though. That's because I now knew a lot more of the truth. I had done pretty much jack shit with it. Anyways, I let him blow off some steam by ranting at me, and then I sent him on his way. He swings by a few more times, never for any real point. Our relationship gets marginally better. We played a game of darts at some point. And then I stopped seeing him for a while. Then one night, I'm closing up shop when I hear a noise behind me. I might have been off the force for a while, but my instincts weren't totally shot. I wasn't going to let a kid completely ambush me. I turned around just in time to look Brian in the face, which caused him to hesitate from shooting that taser. It was unclear as to what exactly he intended to do, but I knew his expression well. It was that of a man about to do something very reckless and very stupid. I tried to strike up some of the rapport we had previously had, but he was different. At one point, he mentioned how me and my friend Ollie would pay for strangling the justice system. So he clearly knew more than he did when he had previously met. It was unclear how much more, but he knew more. Still, I tried to get a straight answer out of him, and he continued to act weird. He talked about how it was his right after everything that had happened. He was saying it more to himself than me. And it was that at that point, I knew that something wasn't right. This kid was in over his head. On a hunch, I asked him if somebody had given him the idea for this, whatever this was, if someone was helping him. In response, he shot me with a taser. Before passing out, I got a look at his face and I knew the answer. The fuck? So, dog, what are you saying? I believe he's implying that the Jade Emperor was not Brian alone. Well, I didn't think that yet. It's only how he reacted when I pressed him about the encounter, while he was explaining the rules, that I felt something was off. He spoke as if he hadn't even remembered the incident. Hold on a second. Are you saying that voice wasn't Brian? Ooh. But I thought the guy on the screen wasn't Brian. The person on the screen was most certainly Brian. I would recognize that tattoo anywhere. That's why he was wearing a mask. Though considering the getup he was in. I'm not saying I have all the answers. Didn't then, don't now. But I was definitely suspicious. Something wasn't right. So we really are being held down here for our own protection. The chains are a bit excessive. And if you had been upfront with us, maybe we would have stayed down here willingly. But something wasn't right with the people who were there. The two standout cases being Mouse and Dragon. You two are right. There isn't a good reason for either of you to be here. So I was on the lookout. Then at the end, when I saw Dragon drag Snake away from the group, I had a feeling that was the first move. So impulsive, that one. I already apologized, you fuckwad! How long are you gonna be on it? How long are you gonna be on this? It's just still surprising that you'd believe such a blatant lie. I mean, someone like me, funding a gang like the Scorpions. The Jade Emperor must have been transmitting hypnotic powers through those speakers. Fuck you! Well, my point stands that the person behind this clearly manipulated Dragon into getting into a fight alone with Snake. First things first, I got Bunny to gather up everybody in one spot, where people could all see each other. Why'd you do that again? Not important right now. Next, I ran after you and interrupted the fight. Didn't have time to let things run their course, so I used the taser I found earlier in the gym to put you both to sleep. We already know this part. I'm being thorough. And stop yelling, I'm standing right there. Anyways, luckily the two of you had already inputted your actions, so I just dragged you to the nearby side exit in preparation. When the game ended and the neck braces all came unlocked, I did the honor of taking them off for you. Then when I returned, I realized that Mouse, the other person of interest, was gone. I chased after you and was able to catch you just before you walked in head first into that trap. Again, thank you for that. Anyways, at this point, I was putting two and two together. Dragon and Mouse and possibly Snake were all being targeted. You were brought here to die. That main reason, alongside a couple of other things, I brought you to this little safe house. To keep us safe, right? Yep. And you're so certain this co-conspirator of yours exists. I'm not all so certain, but I'll say this. Mouse, after I knocked you out, I knocked on the door to Brian's base. I didn't get a response. Huh? Maybe he was playing coy. Maybe the explosion wasn't the thing that killed him. Shit, I had a feeling about that. Dog's words hung heavy in the air. If what he was suggesting was true, I already knew part of this story. When he laid it out I couldn't help but feel we were part of something much larger. I must say, though, it seems like whoever's behind this nefarious plot went through an awful lot of trouble to eliminate the three of us, even if they blundered at the end. For what purpose would they be so incensed to kill us? I have to imagine it's related to the murder of Amadeus Bowen. I mean, I don't know why, exactly, but that seems to be the only real connection between the three of us, right? Yeah, seems to be. I'm less concerned as to why they were trying to kill you three. It's more about the murders you don't commit. Like Jazz, or Mahjong, for that matter. But I digress. Anyway, why not just execute the whole lot of us? Seems like the way they went about it was rather inefficient. Thought carefully. I knew the case very well, at least in the abstract. After all, my dad had obsessed a lot about it. I truly believed that Aaron Morris was innocent. Never actually thought he was right, with all the evidence, but everything Dog had said I began to reconsider. Is there something more to this that we had missed? Well, so long as Aaron Morris was the only person who could have stolen the MasterCard from Amadeus Bowen's wallet, I suppose it's pointless to worry about such things. I wonder, is that really the case? You're wondering that? Weren't you the one who gave the testimony to that effect? I did. Like I said then, Amadeus dropped his wallet on the floor at some point, the two left, and Aaron came back to get it for him. Aaron could have taken the MasterCard then. However, at one point, before he dropped his wallet, Amadeus went into the bathroom. He was pretty sloshed at the time. Perhaps someone swiped it from him then. Really? Why wasn't this a bigger deal? He still had his wallet on him when he left the restroom. The prosecutor argued that, while it's possible that in his inebriated state, Amadeus might have been stolen from. However, it was unreasonable to think a pickpocket could have taken the wallet, looked through it, taken the MasterCard specifically, and then put the wallet back in Amadeus' pocket without him noticing. Especially considering he just took a piss at a urinal. When you put it that way, it does seem difficult. As you probably know, after going to the bar, Aaron took Amadeus back to their workplace, and Amadeus slept in his personal office. Security tapes may have been messed with, but that only extends to the actual day of the murder, so no one came in and stole from him when he was sleeping. Right. Yeah, I don't know much about it, but it seems like Aaron definitely fucking killed Amadeus. And honestly, good for him. Dragon! She actually has a point. Oh? As detestable as violence is as a rule, there are certain situations where they may be morally permissible. Depending on to what extent of Amadeus' crimes Aaron was aware of, specifically if he knew how compromised the police state was, it's reasonable to conclude that murder was the only affordable option. I do not wish to condone murder, however I find it hard to imagine the punishment matched the crime, as it were. Snake was right. Yeah, you could make a case for justified. No, maybe not justified, but he certainly deserved to die, Amadeus did. What dog had told me, Amadeus was a monster, someone who needed to be slayed. He had sympathy towards the person who killed him. However, someone that atrocious surely attracted powerful enemies. He viewed the case not as a disgruntled employee lashing out at an abusing boss, but as the assassination of a person who was tantamount to a crime boss. There was suddenly a whole new lens to look at the case through. Far more care, intent, and planning could be pinned to the killer. And there are certainly unresolved mysteries in this case. I think something's wrong with this case. What, do you think this Aaron dude's innocent? I don't know, I just think something's wrong. Let me just... For my own sake, I want to try laying things out about the case. Is that okay? Shoot! It's not as if we have much better to do. Okay, so it's important to note the geography of the crime scene. The majority of the action took place on the second floor. Walking in from up the stairs, there's a generally accessible bathroom directly to the left. Further on the left is one waiting room. Bathroom, waiting room, and across from the waiting room is the door to Amadeus' private office. Bathroom, waiting room, private office? Oh wait, my mouse cursor's turned off so you can't see. Against the wall of the center of the room is the secretary's desk. Let's actually see if I can turn this on. Capture cursor. It is actually capturing. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Bathroom, waiting room, Amadeus' office, security desk, secretary's desk. Where she worked? Right. Also along the back wall, the door to a different waiting room to the right, the storage closet to the left. Okay. Good, we got that down. If I'm remembering the scene correctly, all the doors that had windows that could be seen through. That's how I was able to watch everything unfold, after all. It also might be relevant to note that both guest rooms and the storage closet all had windows. Well, since all the windows were found locked from the inside, it's probably not relevant, but I still think it's worth mentioning. Windows actually had little architectural slabs which could in theory be stood on. Wait, you're saying you could walk between these windows? I'm saying it would be very risky, but possible to move between the windows. However, the slab outside the storage closet had broken off a while ago. Okay, no slab there. If the window was open, it'd be possible to maybe move from one slab to the inside of the storage closet by leaning against the wall. However, unless you were incredibly athletic, like tiger or horse level, it'd be impossible to jump out of the storage closet window onto another slab. As it fell off, it'd also probably be impossible to move from the slab outside the window of one waiting room area to the other one. Again, unless you were as athletic as tiger or horse. And that's a lot of detail for something you claim isn't relevant to the case. My father pursued this line of reasoning a lot when looking into his defense. He thought it could be relevant. However, he was never able to work it into the case, and so it became an irrelevant detail. So okay, that's the layout. Day started with Bowen meeting with a contractor who was doing construction right outside the building. Honks. Thinking about it, that was probably Horse. Ah, hello. Bowen's secretary, my guess was Sheep, arrived at some point in the morning as well. Early enough to see Horse leaving Bowen's office and go down the stairs. The athlete, my guess would be Tiger, then arrived at the scene. Bowen had a policy of only meeting with people when he felt good and ready, so the secretary directed the athlete to the waiting room to the right. Next person to arrive would be the artist. That's you, right, Snake? Correct. I was commissioned to make a sculpture for Mr. Bowen. It was a hollow metal statue of a giant wallowing in despair, made for the remnants of my past failed sculptures. I quite like that piece. So I remember right, you were carrying the statue with you at the time. Yes, that thing was bigger than me, so moving it was a real pain in the ass. We were told that you could drop the statue, then you were directed to the leftmost waiting room. Indeed. She proceeded to take my statue, almost drop it, and then move it into the storage room. Most people would start looking on their phones or reading a magazine when directed to wait. But according to you, you did no such thing. Indeed. I was deep in my thoughts that day. When I get in that state, it's almost trance-like. If I'm like that, I can be very simple-minded, forgetting even the most basic of things. So while in thought, I blankly stared out the window. Oh, but don't get me wrong. Just because I wasn't paying attention doesn't mean I would have missed something. Sure. Anyways, then the actor came in the building. Let me guess, Rooster? Presumably. He's also shown to the rightmost waiting room. A bit of time passed until the actor's stomach started acting up. He exited the rightmost waiting room and made for the bathroom. Correct, I saw him exit myself. Where'd Sheep go? A bit after that, the secretary went downstairs to the first floor to have breakfast in the break room. Around this point was the earliest the autopsy estimated Bowen could have been killed. But not when he was killed, right? No. I saw the secretary leave. He also had a direct line of view to Amadeus' office. After finally dealing with his stomach problems, the actor left the restroom and returned to the rightmost break room. Then the secretary returned from breakfast and sat down at her desk. This all line up with you, Snake? Indeed. A bit more time passed, and this is when Aaron Morris finally comes up the stairs and enters Amadeus' office. Amadeus texted him to meet him in his office, that he had something important to tell him. Oh, that could very easily have been forged. Importantly, Aaron was wearing a big overcoat and was carrying a suitcase. Like everyone else present, he had a means of concealing what would be the fatal weapon, as well as the stacks of cash later found missing from Amadeus' safe. This is where Aaron's story starts getting nonsensical. He claims that Amadeus remotely fired him, saying that he didn't want to be in the same room as Aaron in case Aaron got violent. According to Aaron, when he walked in the room, Amadeus' laptop? Aaron's laptop? Aaron's laptop started to play a message left for him. that told him to pack his stuff and leave. Furious, Aaron stormed out of the room and complied. This was Aaron's real mistake. He underestimated how thoroughly cyber analysts can vet this stuff. No such video or audio file was found on the laptop. No files had been deleted from the laptop for a while. Bluetooth speakers the laptop was connected to, which played the message, hadn't been connected to by any device other than the laptop. Basically, there's no trace of the message Aaron talks about anywhere, and that's not nothing. Also, it's such a weird fucking lie. I mean, leaving a message in your office to fire somebody? Who's ever heard of some bullshit like that? It doesn't make any sense. Maybe that was the point. Huh? Forget it. Anyway, the important point here is that he claims Amadeus wasn't in the room at this point. Or at least not in the room in a way Aaron could see. Say, when was the last time a reliable source saw Amadeus alive? Would that be Horse? I think Sheep might have talked to him or something? I don't remember the details on that part well enough. I'll have to learn more about that. Anyways, it was at this point that Aaron drove off back to his home. The construction worker, Horse, saw him leaving. He and some coworkers had been working in that area for a while, after all. Some amount of cash bearing Amadeus' fingerprints would later be found in that car's glove compartment. Easily planted if he was killed first thing. Next, Amadeus texted Snake, asking him to bring the statue into his office. It was certainly odd. I plan on talking to the man about the piece myself. However, I knew that Amadeus liked to do things his way. I complied, went into the storage compartment. I noticed that Sheep had been kind enough to put the statue atop a piece of cardboard and leave it on a dolly. Putting it with a dolly made it much easier to transport the statue. Although not as easy as I would have expected. You're saying this was likely a fake text? That's the going theory. Then hold on, how would Morse have sent it? I mean, he left at this point, right? And the phone was eventually found on Bowen's body? And what's the deal? It turns out Bowen had an app on his phone which let him schedule text to be sent at a later time. I mean, don't most cell phones these days have that? I don't know if it's an iPhone thing, but... I'm quite serious. Let me text myself a second. Send with effect? No, that's not what I want to do at all. iPhone screen. Send with. Oh God, no. Stop that. Maybe it's not universal. Alright, never mind. Analysis revealed that the app was used on that text. Well, that doesn't look good for Bowen's case. Anyways, I dropped off that statue, dolly and all, in Bowen's office. At this point, I was a little irritated about how I was being treated, so I didn't bother arranging the piece for him. I simply left the building. So at this point, your testimony ends. Coincidentally, the autopsy estimates that the latest Bowen could have been killed was about when Snake left. Oh, then perhaps I did this. Behave. Wait a second, couldn't he totally have done it? The secretary was gone for a good bit, right? Could he have entered Bowen's office at this point? Not possible. Huh? Remember, Snake wasn't the only witness. Tiger was also there, sitting in a place where she could have seen through the door window. She might not have been focused on it all the time, but the way the building was set up, the door to Bowen's office opening would be in full view of the window. She couldn't miss it. And if she couldn't clearly identify the people involved because of her condition, she would have seen the door opening. In a sense, Snake and Tiger kept each other in check. Tiger couldn't leave the room without Snake seeing her. Snake couldn't enter the office without Tiger seeing him. And no one else could get to the office without both of them acting as witnesses. A rather elegant maze of vision, wouldn't you say? A real pain in the ass, it sounds like. Anyways, after this, a little time passed. Then the actor got fed up with waiting and left the room and stormed into Amadeus' office. The secretary tried to stop him, but he pushed past her. The secretary expected to hear shouting, knowing her boss was not a man who tolerated such disrespect. However, a bit of time passed, and nothing happened. What? Curious, the secretary looked in the room to see the actor twirling around in Bowen's chair. What, so Rooster was just poking around the victim's room alone for a bit? Ain't that suspicious? It is odd. Might be worth asking about. The time the actor claimed he was just admiring the room. The secretary kicked him out of the room. At this point, the actor left the whole building, fed up. Okay, so Amadeus' body was found in his safe? However, at this point, the secretary got worried, not knowing where Mr. Bowen was. She tried calling his phone, but got no response. If she had really listened, she might have heard the phone going off in the safe. After a bit of time, she began to worry where her employer might be. She called 911 about a person who had gone missing. A bit of an overreaction at that point, don't you think? Well, she was right to overreact. Anyway, a cop that happened to be nearby was sent to check out the place. That cop was presumably Bunny. The secretary explained the situation to the cop, and in turn the cop began to search the area. Before too long, he decided to open the rather large and conspicuous safe in Mr. Bowen's room. Inside, he found the body of Amadeus Bowen, stuffed in his own safe. Some amount of cash had seemingly been moved out of the way to that make room. It was at that point the scene was declared a crime scene, and the athlete was asked to leave. Wait, so Tyke was just sitting here the whole time? And that tracks. Amadeus was found to have been bludgeoned to death with a statue in his office. Wait, what? A statue that would later be found in a river, nearby Aaron Morris's house. It was also strangled with a thin, wire-like instrument. Coroners actually argued over whether or not this was the thing that killed him and the blow to his head was post-mortem, or if this simply knocked him out. So yeah, that's the case. Impressive memory, Mouse. Especially for someone not involved in the case. Yeah, you know it better than I do. Like I said, my dad talked about it quite a bit. So, that's cool and all, but what's the point? I mean, by your own story, it's clear that Brian's dad did it, right? That would indeed be the natural conclusion. When you combine everyone's testimonies, the time of death, the money in the car, the odd story about the pre-recorded message, and the stolen MasterCard. Yeah, it definitely looks that way. I mean, that's what I thought for the longest time. If there's more to the story, then maybe. I was at a loss for words. It's not like I could come up with a solution. How could I? The world had been unable to prior to this point. However, Dog clicked his tongue. You know, I think there's actually a hole in that story. What do you mean? For the first time, Dog thought carefully about his next words. You know when I showed everybody the knife? Yeah? Well, I was reaction testing. I'm a pretty good poker player. It means I'm pretty good at reading people. Well, it was minor. When I showed off that knife, I thought I saw a tail. Wasn't sure before if I was just imagining things or what, but counting the story like that, with the suspect in mind. What? Before Dog could continue, something very strange happened. All of a sudden, heavy metal music began to blare through the room, coming from some speakers on the wall I hadn't paid much mind to before this point. guess it was a system to play music? Tried to ask Dog what was happening, but whatever he answered I could barely hear. I mean, it was blaring loud. Why did speakers even go this loud? Dog began to walk up the stairs, heading to the door, trying to see what the hell was happening. However, he wasn't the one to open the door. The door swung open on its own. And out the door came a gloved hand holding a shotgun. Holding a shotgun right to the head of Dog. No, no, no. This wasn't good. I tried to rush forward, but the chain connected to my neck pulled me back. God damn it, Dog, why did you need to so thoroughly imprison us when we were on the same team? It seemed as though Dog was frantically trying to convince the person of something. But it seemed like a moot point, with the music being as loud as it was. His face was flushed with something. Something more than just horror. It was recognition in his eyes. After a few seconds, it was clear that negotiations were not in the cards. Dog began to turn his head to us. In that moment, I saw the shotgun recoil back. Recoil because it had just sent a bullet flying through Dog's head. No! No! Why, when everything else was so loud, can I hear my own scream with such crystal clear accuracy? Why was it? Why was that? Was I able to hear? After firing the shotgun, the gloved hand, which had been holding it, retreated back behind the doorframe. Dog, on the other hand, put his 2 seconds left of life to some use. One of his hands he clasped around his own mouth. With his other, he stuck out 3 fingers. I had no idea what this meant. But he looked me dead in the eyes when he did this. 3. He was doing it for me. It was unnerving, the sight of Dog staring me down with blood rushing out the side of his head. I don't know at what point he stopped seeing me. I know at what point I stopped seeing him. A few seconds later, the lights in the basement went out. What the fuck? It was pitch black. At the same time, the music stopped. I could very clearly hear the sound of footsteps going down the stairs. I could hear the footsteps approaching. I could hear the sound of a shotgun being pumped. I closed my eyes, trembling, shaking. Then I couldn't hear much of anything.